overview, roughly, of my 3 main teachings. They are in the order that I sort of prioritize them for myself, so the order in which I discovered it. The first teaching is that of awareness, or presence awareness. I call this enlightenment. This was the main drive for myself, to find whatever that is, the ultimate answer. Later found out this is not the ultimate answer, but at the time that was satisfying to my quest for the ultimate answer. So enlightenment for me covers the idea that what we're seeking is always already here, precisely because we can never become anything new. We can never find anything new, not really. Everything already exists, everything is already discovered. So we're simply little personas, discovering, stumbling, and seeking for that which is already the case. We're trying to find our true nature, we're trying to find our essence, we're trying to find something that does not change, we're trying to find something reliable. So enlightenment for me is that moment, quote unquote, which is not necessarily just one moment. There's that realization that what you are is right now, right here. It's listening to my voice. It's noticing your sense perceptions. It is that intangible quality of cognizance, that intangible quality of awareness itself. Can you all feel that right now? Can you all notice that you are aware? So it's kind of funny that we seek for this, right? Because it's so simple. It's kind of funny that we make such a big deal out of it because it's so easy. Because it's so plain, ordinary, already here. So we hear a lot of stories about awakening. We have all these descriptions and images of enlightenment, but really it's so simple. It's very, very easy. It's already here. And for me, the shift happened at 8 p.m. when I realized that which I could recognize when I started meditating and quieting the mind, that was all fine. Like I got a better and better sense of this awareness that never leaves. But at some point I realized that which I'm looking for, that awareness which is here, is always already here, and not only when I'm not thinking, not only when I'm meditating, not only when I'm thinking in a certain way, it's always here. So whatever you're thinking right now, whatever I'm thinking right now, whatever I'm feeling right now, whatever you're sensing right now, whatever happened yesterday, whatever will happen tomorrow, whatever is happening now, it doesn't matter. Because, at least it doesn't matter from the point of view of enlightenment, because what is seeing is always seeing. What is here is always here. You are inescapable. You are effortless. You are already free. So the moment I recognized that, it continued to be appreciated, it continued to be recognized, it continued to be made more familiar to me. And the more familiar we become with that which is already here, the less we will think that we're not already here, the less we will think we're not already free. So if anything, it's a process of awakening, and then it's a process of discovering the ideas that we have about not being perfect yet, about not being aware yet, about not being awake yet. And so by bringing our attention to the recognition that we had in that initial awakening, which is as simple as noticing for 2 seconds right now that something here, as you, is aware of my words. So now note down this date and the time. It is 7... Wait, that's not correct. Wait, that's not correct either. Oh wait, it's wrong. My watch is messed up. On the 6th. So make a note, mental note, or on your phone, so that if you ever write a book, you can say that, if it didn't happen earlier already, that you woke up to the fact that you're aware already. It was very simple. No fireworks, just something here is noticing that this guy is speaking. Very simple. Now, after that moment of awakening, which you've just all had, welcome. Good job. You will continue to discover or eliminate, in a way, transform any ideas that you might have been brought up with about this not being the case yet, about you not being perfect yet. Again, so this awareness, which is hearing me right now, and again, you can all recognize this. Does anyone not know what I'm talking about right now? Cool. Okay. So that which is here right now, and hearing and seeing and listening and sensing, that awareness has certain primordial qualities that are sort of opposite to everything we've been taught about ourselves, such as it's already here, it's already perfect, it's already complete, it contains everything that could ever possibly be, instead of you're not good enough, you need to work hard, it's not already here, you're not complete yet, you need to find completion. Peace is found in certain experiences, satisfaction is found in certain experiences and not in others. As soon as you bring that recognition to that awareness over and over and over again, now that's the process of discovering after initial awakening. The more of your awareness you bring to this recognition, the more these qualities become yours, even though they already are. But your persona starts to reflect that awareness, starts to reflect that satisfaction, starts to reflect that peace, starts to reflect that confidence that you're already free, starts to reflect the conviction that you're already awake, that you're already complete, that everything is inside of you, etc. Now, there's different degrees of this realization. And the only way to increase the depth of this realization is to repeat the recognition as clearly as you can for 2 to 5 seconds at a time, several times a day. Does that make sense? It's very simple. I don't think I can bring it any simpler. You wake up to awareness and you repeat that recognition as clearly as you can for 2 to 5 seconds several times a day. Got it? Either way, I don't care. And you start to realize that there's something more than awareness. There's something beyond consciousness. There's something beyond presence. Now that something cannot be described, so it gets a little tough to talk about it. But I do a pretty good job, so I'm going to try. Now when you notice that you are, right now, when you notice that there is a sense of presence awareness, can you also notice that that itself is present? Try to follow me here. It's a little subtle. We're talking about the absolute after all. Presence awareness is itself present. In a sense, you could say, I am aware of presence awareness. Does that make sense? You can notice the sense of I am, no? You can notice even awareness, subjective as it is, pure subjectivity of awareness itself, seeing itself, awakeness itself, clarity itself, cognizance itself, the intangible itself. But you're still recognizing the intangible. You're able to notice that awareness is awareness. In other words, awareness is, in the very subtlest sense of the meaning, an object. The subject itself is actually an object. That's why you, as the infinite, can grow tired of identifying yourself with the object that is awareness, the manifestation that is awareness. Now often we don't really talk about this, or you don't hear spiritual teachers talk very much about, at least I haven't found. Many talk about awareness as an object. It's awareness as the subject, as the absolute. But what I've found is that awareness is not the absolute. Awareness is the first manifestation of the absolute. The absolute is absolute. The absolute is indescribable. The infinite is infinite. It cannot be defined by a quality limited and small as awareness. Awareness has a limitation. It has to be aware. Infinity is not limited to having to be aware. Ta-da! That's why, for those that are ready and ripe and all that nonsense, like when the apple is ripe, it will fall from the tree. Don't believe in that. But when you are, you will find that awareness, in a sense, drops away. It's like it itself becomes tiring because you're identified with it. It's not that awareness is bothersome in and of itself. It's just the association of yourself with awareness is what becomes tiresome. Your association with yourself as the I or the I am becomes tiresome. It's that link, that identification with, that becomes tiresome because it's not absolutely true. Now initially it's the biggest satisfaction you can find because it's so much truer, so much freer, so much more indescribable than any object you've previously identified with. But so at some point, when awareness has been sufficiently recognized and realized and grown familiar with, befriended, then you can notice how anything that you place a lot of attention on now becomes the object. Similarly, when you realize yourself as awareness and things sort of become ephemeral and empty and dreamlike and transparent, and you don't have as many clutches anymore, as many, what's the word? I guess attachments you could call it. You don't have as many associations. You don't refer to things as objects as much anymore because you see that they're all appearances of the subject. So really the objects that you perceive are projections of the subject itself. But now that that is seen, now that you see through the illusion of objectivity and objects, what you then see is awareness, or presence, or the now. But since now all your attention is naturally absorbed in awareness, or the now, I'm not saying that you have to recognize awareness all the time, but when you get to the stage where it's sort of naturally here, and you're sort of naturally noticing that you're aware, and no one can really take that away from you anymore, and no experience can really take that away from you anymore, you might get triggered, you might have challenging experiences, but you're always noticing that there is something aware of all that. There's something that is free from that. Even if you're suffering, there's something that's aware of it, something that's witnessing it. When that becomes more and more natural for you, then you can understand how now your attention, or awareness itself, is sort of self-absorbed. So now, what is the object of awareness's attention? Itself. So now, awareness is the object. And as soon as there is an object, there is, well, this is not necessarily true, but I was going to say, as soon as there is an object, then you identify with that object. So now that you are identifying with awareness itself, that can therefore grow tiresome because it's not the ultimate truth. It's still a focus that you have to, in a sense, maintain, even though it's self-maintaining. But it's still something that is in your consciousness. It's still something that is pulling your consciousness into an object-focused state, even though the object knows the subject. Okay, very technical. Does it make sense so far? So then, what is beyond consciousness? What are you truly? Well, you are all of it because it all comes from your desire to create, your desire to manifest, your desire to know yourself, your desire to be the one knowing itself. And so, it's all good. It's all you. But, for the sake of reversed exploration, what are you ultimately speaking? Ultimately speaking, you are infinite, indescribable, nothing beyond, free, not this, nor that, nor the experiencer of this or that, neither perception nor non-perception, ingraspable. Again, not this nor that, nor the experiencer of this or that. Now many people get the principle of I'm not this nor that. Do you get that? I'm not this flower, beautiful as it is, even though I am it too, because it's created out of my energy. But again, for the sake of reversed investigation, I'm not the flower because I'm aware of the flower. I'm not my body because I'm the awareness of my body. I'm not my emotions because I'm the awareness of my emotions. So I'm not this nor that. Anything that can appear to my awareness, I am not. But awareness itself is not often understood to also not be you. You are also not awareness. Awareness is optional. Now there's a few ways to realize this experientially, even though it's beyond experiencing. One such way is to, for a moment, ignore everything. Everything that comes to mind, you ignore it. So an experience arises, a sensation arises. You ignore it. You look whatever the other way might be. Oh, something registers itself inside of my awareness. Immediately, don't even go into it. There's no worth, for the sake of this experiment, to go into anything. So you ignore whatever comes up. You ignore that. You ignore that. So you use experience as a trampoline into non-experience. Anytime you experience something, you register something. Every time consciousness collapses onto an experience of itself, you look the other way as far as you can, wherever that might be. This is metaphorical, it's energetical, but it works. An experience arises over here, and before you get engaged in it, say no, ignore it. Go completely the other way. And keep doing that, keep doing that, keep doing that, keep doing that, keep doing that. And even do it to the sense of being the recognizer of experiences. Now again, this is where it gets really subtle. And it might not be for everyone all the time or right now. But try it out. So notice that there is a recognizer in you, as you. There's a recognizer of experiences. You are the recognizer of experiences. If you can notice the recognizer of experiences, you can also look the other way. Move away from the recognizer. Be without the recognizer for a few seconds. Be absolutely indescribable. Unaware of anything. Really. Yet not unaware either, but you're not recognizing anything. It's as if the vast, intangible, indescribable ocean of awareness, which already is empty and subjective, now becomes even more empty because it's reflective of infinity, of its source, of the truly indescribable, the truly intangible, the truly unmanifest, the truly before time. Ignore experiences until you get to the sense of, hey, there's this recognizer that goes to experiences, and then onto itself as awareness, and then maybe a moment of non-awareness, and then a moment of awareness of something, and then a moment of awareness of itself. Notice that recognizer, notice the awareness itself, the presence itself, and jump beyond the presence. Move away from the presence. Ignore presence. Until you get this understanding or realization that you don't have to be aware of anything if you don't want to. You start to get in touch with infinity. It's fine. So, yeah. A similar exercise has you go beyond whatever you're experiencing over and over and over again. Call this the perpetual beyondness loop. Activate the perpetual beyondness loop. When I was just exploring this understanding, this realization for myself, I very quickly came up with this method to increase the understanding or realization of it rapidly. So what I would do is, as soon as I had already gotten a touch or a sense, a glimpse of the infinite gap, the indescribable source, the void, perhaps, however you want to call it. No words actually do it justice because it's not this, not that, nor the experiencer of this, but words have to be used. So what I did is, whenever an experience would arise of experiencing, I would say to myself, so to speak, beyond this. I am beyond that, beyond that, beyond that. And when you activate this for, say, I don't know, depends on the person, but say an hour. Sounds a little long, but just give it a shot. And you go beyond this, beyond that, beyond this. Your awareness takes on the quality of total transparency at some point. It becomes easier and easier and easier. At first it might feel like practice, but after a while it's like awareness is emptying itself out from identity with objects, as well as identification with even itself as some kind of a ground of being. Now suddenly the ground of being is the groundlessness of non-being. So awareness becomes empty, reflective of the one, the infinite one, the indescribable one, by going beyond, 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 beyond. Don't give yourself a rest. Yeah, I can't do it. No, beyond that too. Yeah, but I don't want to. No, beyond that too. Oh, I'm tired. No, beyond that too. I have an appointment. No, beyond that too. Do that for an hour and see what happens. It becomes perpetual, at least for a period of time, because you've built up momentum. Doesn't mean it will last you forever, but the realization will last you forever. You will find that after an hour of doing this, there is a very natural, inescapable transparency to your awareness that is now reflective of source. Peaceful in the most exquisite way, because it's even absent of peace, which is bothersome in comparison. And then it becomes self-sustaining, at least for a period of time. Enough to where you can really start to drop into this realization, and the assumption of you being presence, or you being the great I am, or you being awareness, or you being anything, drops away, becomes emptied out. And so you will feel for the rest of that day, after practicing that for about an hour, you will find that very naturally so, nothing sticks anymore. Because you've activated the perpetual beyondness loop. Beyond this, beyond that, beyond this, beyond that, beyond this, beyond that, beyond this, beyond that. And you become finer and finer and finer and finer and finer in your awareness, and less and less and less and less and less and less identified with anything. Another method you could apply is ask yourself what remains at the end of all universes. What remains after all experience is done? That's the right answer. Nothing. Which is the source of everything. The enabler of everything. The Infinite One enables everything. It never becomes anything. It only enables everything. Does that make sense? It's like, sometimes they use the analogy of throwing a tennis ball to your dog. The dog kind of is the person that sees the tennis ball and chases it because it doesn't know any better. It's kind of stupid, but so sweet, innocent. But source is like you throwing the ball, right? It's like you tossing a creation into the field of life, and then the personas start running after it. So you're like source that throws the ball, but it's never attached to the ball. Now you cannot continue to be the enabler of experiences if you were to be dragged along with the ball. If you were actually attached to your creations, you would not be a very efficient creator, because you would become your creations and you'd be stuck in that moment. So you're like the releaser of creations. You're like the enabler. You enable these things. But you will always remain free from the things you enable, beyond the grasp of the creations that you toss into existence. That's one of the senses that comes with it. Another sense that comes with it is that nothing ever happened. Not really. Nothing ever happened. And it kind of takes all edges off of this experience. Nothing ever happened. Yay! So now I can have fun, because nothing ever happened anyway. Now, be careful not to lose your integrity and your morality, but you won't, because you're all good people. But you can have the realization that nothing ever happened. When you have the realization that nothing ever happened, because of this intangibility that's now present, this ingraspability, this transparency that's now your awareness, you have now become not just awareness, but transparent awareness. Awareness transparent to its source, its enabler. In that mode, in that state, which is not a state, it's already here. It's freer than you can think of. It feels from that point of view like nothing ever applied to itself. To you as the infinite creator, to you as the one, to you as source, nothing ever applies. You see, everything can happen to creation. But again, it happens to the ball, it happens to the playing field, it happens to whatever you're enabling. It doesn't actually happen to you. Nothing can happen to you because, quite frankly, you're nothing. So nothing can happen to nothing. It's very hard for something to happen to nothing. So nothing ever happened to nothing. Everything always happens to everything. Now the liberating quality of this is that you can start to see and experience directly that whatever it is you're experiencing applies to consciousness. All the suffering you've done, thank you very much, has only ever applied to consciousness itself. It has never applied to the Absolute. You see, the Absolute has never blinked at any moment in your life. And it will continue to never blink at anything you ever experience. Oh my God, this experience is so intense. Can't get out of it. That's great. It applies to consciousness, not to you. So no need to change your experience, because everything applies to consciousness. But you are, quote unquote, aware of consciousness. And you can see that even consciousness does not touch you. You can be with or without, beyond or engaged in. Everything that has ever occurred has occurred inside of consciousness. So who does an experience belong to? Every experience you've ever had belongs to that which is aware of the experience. Let that do the suffering for you, or the joy, or the happiness, either way. But see that it applies to the consciousness that's generating these experiences. it doesn't apply to you as the infinite. That's why it's peaceful beyond peace. Because peace is basically found in the energetic experience of the substratum of consciousness itself. The energy, the presence energy that makes up everything. Or the sense simply of spacious awareness. That's where we find a sense of peace. But as soon as we lose the recognition, or we're not yet fully convinced that that's always already here, we lose the sense of peace. But then it's back again. Oh, and it feels so good. But not really, because we're holding on to it. We're identified with peace. Now what if even peace would not apply to you? Now there is peace. The peace of not even having to be peaceful or not doesn't really matter, because it doesn't apply to you to begin with. Nothing ever happened to you. Everything always happens to consciousness. Nothing ever happens to you. Everything always happens to consciousness. Nothing ever happens to you. So you are the infinite. Now this is like penetrating from the inside out, penetrating a little hole in the sphere or bubble of consciousness itself. Consciousness assumes itself to be the absolute, to be something, to be everything. And in a way it is, because everything applies to consciousness. But beyond everythingness, there is something else that's way faster, way more ingraspable. Beyond everythingness, there is, again, neither perception nor non-perception. So I'm not saying that's non-perception. I'm saying it's neither perception nor non-perception. This is kind of fun. Some people are like, yeah, that's cool. I was like, what the fuck? It's all fine. It's a little technical, the way I'm talking about it. Just use the methods to make it experiential, even though it's non-experience. In a way. What the fuck? Just do the methods, do the exercises, and see what happens. And if all else fails, just blame it on the fact that your apple is not yet ripe. And enjoy the ripening presence and just be still. Be quiet. I know that I am. Until the I am is resolved and emptied out and made transparent to its source. The ingraspable. The infinite. But this is a way freer way of recognizing or knowing yourself, because it doesn't go by any laws. It doesn't go by any rules. It doesn't have to be present. It doesn't have to be aware. It doesn't mean that awareness will not be there, available. It will always be available. In fact, it's always going on, whether or not you're engaged with it, whether or not you're associated with it. It is still there. But it becomes so on the edge of your horizon that to you it feels optional. It no longer feels like you have to be associated with everything that happens inside of your awareness. Cool. That's teaching number 2. Congratulations. Teaching number 3. So teaching number 1 I called enlightenment. Teaching number 2 I called infinity. Teaching number 3, and again this is sort of in the order in which I started to embody these things. And I think the order is somewhat relevant for most people, so I'll keep it in that order. The third teaching is that of empowerment. Now some people just start with empowerment, and that can work. It wasn't my path because I was seeking for enlightenment. I was seeking for absolute answers. Some people just want to feel better, which is great. In a sense, that's what I wanted too. But I had more curiosity. I wanted the knowledge. I wanted the awareness. I wanted the understanding. I wanted to penetrate those secrets. I didn't just want to feel good. Yay, this teaching of this dude works. I'll just continue to work with that teaching. No, I wanted to penetrate all these secrets, these layers, so that I can place every single little thing in its proper place and feel like I'm being thorough. Now, why did I want that? I wanted that because I came here to be teacher. Very simple. So I had this innate drive to penetrate these secrets so that I can share them with other people. So you don't have to necessarily do the same. You don't have to be a yogi about it. In fact, for most people, it's not that healthy or relevant. I see a lot of people trying to sort of do what I did, trying to be the yogi, trying to be the I don't know how to say it, student, scholar of all of this mysticism. And quite frankly, often it's just a form of vanity or idle curiosity, and not really something that's innately relevant to their blueprint for this life. And you see, everything that you'll realize is already realized anyway, so you don't have to worry about it too much in this life. This whole story about you have to realize it, otherwise bad things will happen for the next 1,000 lifetimes, is not necessarily true. Wait, so what are you saying? Is it true? Is it not true? Not necessarily. It can be, but not necessarily. I don't want to take away all the mystery, except for myself. What's more relevant for most people is to gain some level of clarity and understanding of penetrating, and my understanding is still ever growing. It's just, that of a toddler on the cosmic scale of realizations. But for a human being, it's pretty good. So, but it's not that relevant for everyone to know all these details specifically. So don't bother yourself with them too much, because if it doesn't feel natural, if it doesn't feel relevant for you to have that yogic style about it, it might simply not be relevant for you, and you might be working against your own stream. Your stream might simply want to express something in its life. Maybe it wants to write a few books and meet all these people and enlighten their world simply by being a bright spark of creation. So honor your natural blueprint, honor what feels like it's part of your resonance. There's a lot of people that are convinced by spiritual teachings and teachers that they have to study a particular path because that's the way to enlightenment, that's the truth. No, I've seen many people mess themselves up severely, energetically speaking, out of that idea of the teacher knows what he knows, and my path is to follow the path of the teacher, or to say what he or she says I should realize. But you should always check in with yourself and follow your own resonance. That's what I did. It just so happens to look the way it looks for me. It doesn't mean it should look that way for you at all. So if I were to go against my resonance, which I tried in various ways for years, but I could never do it for very long in each of these disciplines, then I would simply make myself sick. I would simply make myself not enjoy my experience here. I would simply make myself a martyr of some kind. And my knowledge at that point would be dead. It would be repetition. It would be read from a book. It would not be alive. It would not be infused with relevance. It would not be infused with the freshness. So be fresh. Be you. Follow your resonance. You don't need to know everything I know. You don't need to know everything the Course of Miracles is saying. You don't need to know everything the Bible is saying. You don't need to know everything that the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali are saying. You don't need to know these things, unless it really resonates for you to know these things and contemplate on it. But for most people, what's way more important is to simply live their life. It's to simply enjoy their life. No, not necessarily in total ignorance and non-investigation, but to not make too big of a deal out of that wholesale realization thing, but to simply take it naturally. Take it moment by moment as resonance, as intuition draws you in. You see, the quickest, most efficient way to actually draw yourself into all the realizations you can ever have and desire and that are truly relevant for your beingness, your soul at this time, the quickest, most efficient, most natural, healthiest, joyful way to do that is actually to follow the breadcrumb trail of your joy, of your resonance, of your excitement. Because you see, it is your higher self, which already knows all these things that you're catching up with and then claiming as your own realizations. Oh, look what I realized. Now I'm enlightened. Higher self's like, oh. It's like, yeah, get over yourself, because it's already here. It's not a big deal. It's really not a big deal. All the self-realization stuff is easier than you think. In fact, the easier you allow it to be, the easier you'll experience it to be, and the quicker you'll actually get to a sense of conviction. And you'll have a natural sense of communication with that higher consciousness which already has realized all these things. You're not trying to take claim of anything. You're not trying to hold on to anything. You're not trying to get anywhere against the natural momentum. So that's the quickest way to actually follow your joy, be in your joy as much as you can. It's the quickest way for you to realize who you are, what you're made of, what is true and what's not true, instead of sitting down and going to the core of it, although at times you may be drawn into that. If you're drawn into that, that's perfectly fine. In fact, that is encouraged. It's gorgeous. When you sit down and you go deep, 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 you can have beautiful quantum leaps in consciousness shifting and understanding more about itself and its nature and its cosmology and all that stuff. So it's great. By all means, if you feel the pull to sit down, close your eyes, remove yourself from the world, and go really deep. Become penetrative in your consciousness. By all means, it is gorgeous, it is very valuable, and it is part of what I teach, for sure. But don't do that out of a sense of vanity. Like, I want to be enlightened, or I want to know what you know, or I want to know what he knows or she knows. Do it because it comes naturally, because you're in the shower, and for some reason, you're really feeling like, oh. And then when you feel you have found the clarity you're looking for, that you were craving, you will feel a natural outward movement again happen. Because this is the natural balance of the human being. To be outward, to be inward, to be outward, to be inward, until both more and more seem to actually be the same experience. But follow that resonance. Anyway, third teaching is that of empowerment, or the natural way of living, basically. The joyful way of living. Follow your bliss, cookie cutter as it sounds. Follow your bliss, be your bliss, act on your bliss, think your bliss, be your bliss all the time as much as you can. Recognize your bliss. Act on the things that feel like they're a representation of your bliss. Think things that make you feel the most blissful, because those types of thoughts will align you with the perspective of consciousness that's actually in greatest alignment with the truth of your being. Therefore, bliss is the quickest guidance mechanism leading you into more realization of what you are. Trust me, the more blissful you are, the more natural you will be about your realizations. Now you can go down the drain, go deeper and deeper into depression and stuckness and trying to realize who you are. You can do that, and some people have been very successful at that way. You don't have to do it that way, but you can. Either way. But in general, the more blissful you are, the more realizations you'll have, because your consciousness is expansive. Now you can also go into expansiveness through the eye of the needle of depression and contraction. Sometimes that's very powerful and potent. But in general, the more expanded you already are, the more you're naturally seeing things, realizing things. And so follow your bliss, be your bliss, think bliss, and you'll get there. Because you're already here. You'll activate whatever you need to know exactly when you need to know it. Now that's the humble way to live. That's the non-vain way to live. That's the non-idle way to live. It's the true way to live. It's the natural way to live. It's to be Adam. It's to be Eve. It's to follow your joy. It's to follow your bliss. To not eat from the apple of knowledge. To think that you know the path. To know right from wrong. To know comparison and judgment. But to simply live naturally. Freely, sinless, guiltless. Blissful. Adam and Eve were blissful. Because they had no knowledge. They were stupid. Like dogs. Blissful. It works. It works better than most people's attitude these days. Most spiritual seekers' attitude. You're still a spiritual seeker if you consider yourself a spiritual seeker, and not in the deepest, most profound, natural way as being a seeker of endless exploration, but actually still identifying yourself with all the books that you're reading, and all the other people that read those same books. If you still consider yourself a spiritual seeker, chances are you're not the happiest person on this planet, or even in the 60% of them. Just a rough guess, maybe? An estimate on my end. Might be wrong, but I don't think it is. So, don't be a spiritual seeker. Be free. Be natural. Live your joy. Okay, so again, third teaching is that of empowerment. Instead of transforming what any limiting ideas you might have and turning them into transformative understandings. Turning them into natural ways of understanding who you are. So how do these two paths interrelate? There's that of self-realization, of going inward, going backwards, reversing the process of identification. And then there's the path of being empowered and expressive and sharing and being radiant. So the first two teachings are self-realization oriented, enlightenment, and then infinity. And then empowerment seems to be stepping back into its creation, full-heartedly, more fearlessly, with greater confidence, with greater realization of its unaffected nature, with greater realization of the fact that nothing ever applies to it, therefore it is now free and fearless to play, to explore, and not get hung up as much. So the exploration now becomes more efficient. That's why I like this order in general, but you don't have to follow this order. Again, if you're really apt at following your joy and thinking things that bring you joy, then that will open you up naturally to self-realization and combine those paths as one. But if you're following self-empowerment from a position of, I can be affected, so I'm going to run away from negative experiences, and I'm going to hold on to positive experiences, then you will find that you'll continue to suffer. Hence, maybe you need a dose of self-realization, the realization that what you're seeking is already here. Your unaffected nature is already here. You're already free. Awareness is already aware. Awakeness is already awake. Peace is already peaceful. Can't do anything about it. Your experiences are already accepted by the Creator, otherwise they wouldn't be here. You don't have to accept or not accept your experiences. In fact, you can't. You can only pretend. I'll accept this one, but not that one. I did so good accepting this experience and not accepting that experience. Well, both your acceptance and your non-acceptance and both experiences that you're either accepting of or non-accepting of are always already accepted, including your attitude of acceptance or non-acceptance. So it's really redundant to think about mindfulness or consciousness or presence or acceptance in that way. It's not a doing. It's already here. This is already accepted. You may like it or not like it. That's another thing. But that's already accepted too. Otherwise it wouldn't exist. If something was truly not accepted by the Creator, it wouldn't be here. So as soon as something's here, you have nothing to say about it. It's here. Deal with it. It's already accepted. So when you develop that balance of self-realization and self-actualization, or self-empowerment, you start to become really, really malleable, really, really free. Because now, you're never stuck in anything. You're not even stuck in a teaching. You're not even stuck in a direction of creation. You don't have to be phasing creation all the time, and you also don't have to be phasing away from creation all the time. Whenever you feel you need a dose of phasing away from creation just to get to some clarity, you do so. And whenever you feel excited to re-enter creation and play and manifest your reality in your dream life, then that's what you do. And then you start stumbling a little bit and you start accumulating some erroneous ideas and identifications. And it's very simple to then step back, re-find the peace beyond peace, be replenished, be free, and then naturally you will find yourself drawn back into creating. Nothing ever happened to you. Isn't that good news? I thought it was when I first realized it. It's like a lifetime of struggle and identification just dropped away. Oh, wait a second. None of that applied to me, or will ever apply to me. It's like your soul can breathe, because now it's transparent to its true, stateless state, beyond identification altogether. Doesn't mean you cannot be fully engaged with certain things. Doesn't even mean you cannot choose to be fully identified with certain things. But it means that always at the root of your being you will know and be able to return to, if required, the very clear realization that nothing ever happened to you. And it's not a cop-out. It's just a transparency. You'll still be available to clean up, when it feels natural to do so, to clean up your ways of thinking about this world. Because as soon as you think about this world and the things you see in a certain way that your higher self disagrees with, you will feel it as suffering. That's the emotional guidance system. That's what I teach in empowerment. As soon as you feel bad about something, the response could either be to go to the infinite, realize nothing ever happened to you, but if you don't ultimately address the erroneous perspective, if you don't fully really transcend it and move away from that realization, that understanding, you will continue to find it being attracted in your life, and you will continue to suffer in that way until it is addressed. The clarity that nothing ever happens to you simply gives you the courage to investigate the idea and change it freely, because you know you are the free agent that can move about. So when you feel bad, your thinking is wrong. When you feel great, your thinking is correct. Ta-da! Simple. I like it simple. Does that make sense? Can you apply that? Every time you feel bad, in whatever way or to whatever degree, even mediocrity, just feeling like, yeah, I'm mediocre or whatever, it's a neutral day. No, it's never a neutral day. You're just fucking contracted. But it's not as contracted as the day before, so you call it neutral. It's because you've grown tolerant, not accepting, because you can never grow accepting of misusing your guidance system, but you've grown tolerant of feeling bad. And that's one of the major mistakes of our society, is to include in our perspective of normalcy bad feelings. That's normal, that's life. No, it's not life. It's your guidance system telling you that that's not life. You're not thinking in life-affirming ways. You're not seeing correctly. Your perspective is not vibrationally aligned with that of the higher principles of creation. So very simply, you can use your feeling state as an indicator of how successful you're being at aligning yourself with your true self. Pretty simple. So then how do you get more in alignment? Well, start exploring with different perspectives of the same scenario that triggers your negative feelings. Something happens, you feel bad about it. Ugh, contraction. For a moment, just have the fearlessness. Know that you're unaffected ultimately, so now you can look at it, you can allow it to be there. And in that allowance, in that spaciousness, in that freedom from being attached to the feeling, you can remember and positively define that experience of negativity as being your guidance system operational. Now that's a positive definition of a negative experience. Generate this safety net for yourself. Let your first response to negative feelings be, this is a good experience. This bad experience is a good experience. This negative feeling is a positive statement because it's my guidance system letting me know that my thinking is out of alignment, and so it's an opportunity, a very clear, transparent, self-loving opportunity for me to clean up the way that I see life, my understanding, my beliefs. Why does this feel bad? Because I believe something about it that's not true. Okay, what other perceptions might other people have of this experience that do feel good about this situation? What would they have to think or feel or believe? How would they see this scenario in order for them to not be affected by the same thing? Well, maybe they don't see it as lack. Maybe they see it as an abundance of something. Or maybe they're not even noticing it because they're not giving it any meaning whatsoever. So you start to play with your perspectives, and you will find that from that negative state, if you're open to it, you can find a way of seeing, a way of seeing, a way of seeing, a way of seeing that's incrementally better feeling. And as it becomes incrementally better feeling, you become incrementally more self-realized and self-empowered. Because now you're actually following the guidance mechanism that always shows you the difference between your personally asserted vibration and the true vibration of your non-physical self.